I used to know what time it was by the sound of the kettle in the kitchen. Greg had a way of clanking the lid when he poured water into it. Too fast, always in a hurry. Melissa never made tea, just smoothies and noise. These days I wake to silence. The walls of my room, the annex, used to be robin's egg blue. Leonard painted them himself, one stubborn Saturday back in '84 when he swore we didn't need a professional. I remember the way he'd squint when cutting in near the ceiling, tongue poking out slightly, like a boy again. Now they're painted. Greige. Modern, Melissa had said with a little smile that never reached her eyes. She hadn't asked me. The first time I felt it, the shift, was on my birthday. 78. I sat in the breakfast nook alone. No candle, no cake, not even a card. Greg had texted something vague at noon, and Melissa was at a showing. The girls, my granddaughters, hadn't been home that week. When I mentioned the day to Melissa later, she blinked at me like she was trying to remember something she'd misplaced. Oh, right. Happy late birthday, Eleanor. She'd already turned away. Later that evening, I found my favorite mug, the yellow one with the blue birds Leonard gave me on our 40th anniversary, shoved behind plastic shaker bottles in a cabinet. I couldn't reach without a stool. I didn't say anything. That's the thing they don't tell you about getting old. It's not just that your bones ache. It's that your voice gets smaller in the room. They started calling my space the annex around Christmas. We can store the ski gear in the annex closet, Greg said casually one morning. I stood, there, buttering toast at the counter, waiting for a correction that never came. My room, the one I shared with Leonard for nearly 40 years, reduced to a footnote in a conversation about storage. That was the moment I felt something crack. But I kept quiet. I told myself not to be dramatic. They were busy, after all. Careers, kids, mortgage stress. I tried to be grateful for the roof, the meals, the proximity. Then came the morning Melissa said it. I was setting the table for breakfast. A small thing I still insisted on. Napkins, fruit bowl, warm plates. Leonard always said a warm plate made even a simple breakfast taste richer. Melissa breezed in wearing a blazer too sharp for breakfast. She didn't sit. She didn't touch the coffee. Eleanor, she began, her voice bright like a realtor about to pitch something. I've been thinking, there's this wonderful place, Rosewood Pines. A friend's mom moved there, and she loves it. They do art classes and poetry readings. You'd have your own space, no stairs, no noise. I didn't respond at first. I just kept folding, the napkins. She cleared her throat. I think it might be better suited for your needs. I looked up at her then, truly looked. There wasn't a trace of cruelty in her face, just convenience. That made it worse. You mean you want the annex back? I said, my voice calm. She blinked, caught off guard. No, it's not that. It's just, you've been saying the stairs hurt your knees, and you'd have more independence. That word, independence, they throw it around like a gift when they're actually pushing you out. That evening, I stood in the hallway, back pressed against the wall as Greg walked past me with a contractor on speakerphone. Yeah, knockdown, the wall between the annex and the girls' room. Thinking of putting in barn doors, maybe a skylight. He didn't even glance at me. I went back into the annex, sat on the edge of the bed, stared at the corner where Leonard's armchair used to be, the one they recycled last spring when the fabric started to fray. I looked down at my hands, folded neatly in my lap. That house held my marriage, my babies, Sunday roasts, laughter, echoing off high ceilings, Leonard's jazz records drifting up from the study. I'd wallpapered the bathroom myself. I'd planted every hydrangea in the front garden. I'd cried in the hallway the night Leonard died, and now I was a guest in it. No, Not even a guest. Furniture. They'd already started to forget who I was, but I hadn't forgotten. And I wasn't gone yet. Moving day wasn't how I imagined it. Not that I'd ever imagined being moved like this. Quietly, efficiently, as if I were a set of boxes being relocated. Not a woman with a lifetime of memories behind her. Melissa called it a fresh start. She smiled a lot that morning, but none of it reached her eyes. I remember her standing in my doorway, clipboard in hand, clicking her pen. "Don't worry, Eleanor. We've packed the essentials. Just what you need." I asked about my books, my photo albums, Leonard's cufflinks. "Oh, the photo albums? We scanned them. They're on a USB now," she said brightly, like it was a kindness. "The cufflinks?" "Greg said they're probably with the estate items. We're going through everything." Estate. Leonard wasn't even gone 3 years, and already his life had been reduced to something to be processed. I rode to Rosewood Pines in the backseat of their SUV. Melissa talked the entire way, about how nice the rooms were, how her friend's mother loved it there, how independent. I'd feel. She didn't notice that I stayed quiet, clutching my worn purse like a life preserver. The facility was clean. Polished floors, smiling staff, paintings of gardens and ducks and fields. The kind of place designed to feel like peace, but really just smelled like lemon disinfectant and polite decay. They led me to my room, Suite 2B, and I stopped at the threshold. My belongings were there, technically, but it wasn't mine. The walls were bare. My favorite armchair had been replaced by a boxy beige recliner with plastic handles. The bedding was hotel-style, and on the desk sat a brand-new electric kettle, soulless and untouched. I opened the cabinet looking for my yellow mug, the one with the bluebirds Leonard bought for me at the art fair in Asheville. Gone. In its place were 2 identical white mugs with the Rosewood Pines logo. Mass-produced. Lifeless. That night, I sat on the edge of the bed, too firm, too high, and stared out the window. The blinds were closed, but I could still feel the walls pressing in, like they were asking me to give in, to shrink. I didn't cry. I just opened my notebook and began to write. Day 1. I am here. They say this is my new home. I am not convinced. The days that followed blurred together. They all started with someone knocking gently and asking, "How are we today, Ms. Whitmore?" As if I were a collective, not a person. The food was fine, predictable, soft. Activities were offered. Bingo. Knitting circle. Movie nights with badly timed subtitles. The phone in my room didn't ring. After the 3rd day of silence, I called Greg. He answered on speaker, distracted. "Hey, Mom, everything okay?" "I haven't heard from the girls," I said. "Oh. Yeah, they've been super busy with school. You know how teenagers are?" I waited. "Is there something you need?" he asked finally. I was wondering about the house, my things, and the monthly transfer. It didn't come this week. Greg exhaled, the kind of sigh people give when they're about to lie gently. "Melissa's handling it. She's got a spreadsheet for your care costs now. Everything's accounted for. You don't need to worry." But I started, then stopped. Because I did worry. I worried that my things were gone. I worried that the account I shared with Leonard was no longer mine. I worried that my life had become a ledger entry for people who'd stopped seeing me as anything more than obligation. One afternoon, I overheard 2 aides in the hallway outside my door. They didn't know I was awake. "She's the one whose son moved her in, right?" one said. "Yeah, poor thing. Her son's the power of attorney. Apparently sold her house or something? I don't know. Legal stuff." My chest went cold. Power of attorney? Leonard and I had drawn up papers years ago, but they required my consent. No one had asked for it. No one had told me anything. I called. Greg again that night. He didn't pick up. I left a message. I'd like to review some paperwork. Please call me back. He didn't. The next morning, a package arrived. A redirected letter. It was addressed to estate of Leonard Whitmore. The side envelope was yellowed at the edges. Inside was a notification from a bank about property-related earnings, dated 6 months ago. I stared at the figures. A rental income account. One I hadn't known about. One Leonard never mentioned. I looked at the postmark again. It had been forwarded from my old house. My house. They were getting mail addressed to Leonard. They'd opened it, acted on it, and they hadn't told me a thing. That night, I made myself a cup of tea. Not with my mug, not with my kettle, not even with my tea. They'd packed the wrong box. It tasted wrong. But I sipped it anyway and sat by the window, notebook in hand. Day 27. I think they've taken something more than just my things. They've taken my name, my voice, my place, but I haven't lost it. Not yet. I looked out at the street lamp outside, its glow pooling over the sidewalk like spilled milk. Somewhere beyond that light was a truth I needed to find, and I would, even if I had to do it quietly. 1 page at a time. 80 years. That's a long time to learn how to live with grace. And yet, on the morning of my 80th birthday, I woke up and felt small, not old, not weak, just small. Like someone had been quietly folding me down, one disappointment at a time until I could fit neatly into a corner no one noticed anymore. There were no calls, no flowers. The phone sat silent on my nightstand, its blinking red light stubbornly blank. At breakfast, Marla, one of the aides, smiled when she saw the date on the chart clipped to my door. "Oh, it's your birthday, Ms. Whitmore." I nodded gently. "Well then," she said too brightly, "we'll see what we can do." What they could do was a small cake in the rec room at 3 p.m., chocolate. Dry. Too sweet. My name written in stiff pink icing that read, "Happy Birthday, Eleanor," misspelled, as if I were already slipping away. 2 other residents clapped as the aide sang off key. I didn't know their names, and they didn't know mine. There was no candle, no photo, just a paper plate and a plastic fork. I sat through it, smiling politely. That's what I'd been taught, how to smile while fading, but something inside me was beginning to unlearn that. Later that evening, I sat in the common room near the big screen television. The channel had been left on some local lifestyle program. Real estate features, smiling hosts, shiny countertops. And then I saw it. My house. My house. There it was, bold as anything. The garden path, the porch Leonard built by hand, even the climbing roses I had tended every spring. The segment was titled, "Upcoming Luxury Remodels in Historic Maplewood." The camera panned through the foyer I had polished for decades. Melissa stood at the center, gesturing with rehearsed flair. "We're gutting the whole place. Opening it up. The old layout's gotta go. It's all walls and corners. Very dated." I stared at her face on the screen. Polished, confident, excited. As she pointed at the library wall Leonard had built from reclaimed barnwood. The one where he used to sit and read to the girls. Right here we're thinking. Wet bar, maybe even a wine fridge. She laughed. The camera cut to the garden. We're tearing all this out, obviously. It's wasted space. I think that's when I stopped breathing for a moment. Wasted space. Not the greenhouse Leonard had, grown tomatoes in. Not the path I'd lined with hand-painted stones. Not the porch I stained every other summer, humming to myself. No, not memories. Wasted space. I didn't cry. I didn't rage or shout or crumple the newspaper someone had left beside my chair. Just stood. Quietly, deliberately. I walked back to my room, ignoring the cheery voices of other residents playing cards. I closed the door. Locked it. Then I sat on my bed, the twin-sized one with the floral comforter I'd never chosen, and reached for the journal on my nightstand, the one I had started when I moved here. Each entry small, neat, like me. Tonight I didn't write small. I pressed the pen harder than usual. October 12th. They celebrated my birthday with a cake that spelled my name wrong and 2 strangers who clapped because they were told to. Melissa is on television, pointing at my life like it's a blank canvas. They are gutting the house. Gutting me. They erased me. But I remember everything. I closed the journal, placed it on my lap, and sat with my hands folded on top of it. I thought of Leonard. How he used to say, "People think forgetting is what happens with age. It isn't. It's what people do to the aged. They forget us." He was right, but I wasn't going to let them forget me. Not quietly. Not anymore. It was the smell of old books that drew me in. The library hadn't changed much in 20 years. Still smelled like dust and wax, and cedar oil, like a place that remembered people even when people forgot themselves. The corners of the windows still wore spider webs like lace, and the wooden tables still had the faintest ghost of long-ago fingerprints. I hadn't planned to go there. I'd simply walked. Rosewood offered a scenic shuttle to town twice, a month, and I decided to sign up. The driver thought I was heading for the pharmacy. I didn't correct him. The library stood 3 blocks from Main. Quiet. Overlooked. So was I. I walked past the checkout desk and into the local history section, just to feel the silence wrap around me, and that's when I heard her voice. "Eleanor Whitmore? Is that really you?" I turned slowly. And there she was, June Ellis, thinner than I remembered, but eyes just as sharp behind those tortoiseshell glasses. She hugged me before I could even fully smile. "June," I said softly. "You still smell like peppermint and printer ink," she laughed. "And you still have the posture of a queen. What on earth are you doing here?" We sat in the back, near the dusty fireplace they never used. I told her everything over lukewarm tea poured from a staff pot. No sugar, no lemon. But the comfort was in the company, not the flavor. June listened. Really listened. She didn't interrupt, didn't tilt her head with pity. When I told her about the house, the annex, the real estate segment on TV, she sat forward. "You never signed over the deed, did you?" "No," I said. "Leonard handled all the estate things before he passed. I never touched them." "And you haven't checked the trust? Or the power of attorney papers since?" I shook my head slowly. They told me everything was sorted. I was tired, grieving. I just let them handle it. Her lips pressed into a thin, thoughtful line. That's not how any of this should have gone. Back at Rosewood, I went to the closet. The staff had let me keep 1 cedar chest, the one with Leonard's name carved on the inside by hand. My mementos were inside, folded and yellowed. Photographs in cracked frames, old scarves that still held his scent, a pair of his reading glasses, and beneath the linen lining, where it bunched at the corners, something hard. Taped. I reached under and pulled out a small envelope. Brown, brittle, sealed with wax that had long since cracked. My heart stilled when I read the writing. For Eleanor, if things go wrong. Leonard had never been a man for drama, but he was always thorough, especially when it came to protecting the people he loved. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside were 2 documents. The first, a copy of our last will and testament, notarized, witnessed. It was dated 4 months before his death. In it, Leonard had left me lifetime rights to the house. The wording was deliberate. Full and unencumbered right to reside in, control, or transfer ownership of the primary property located at 143 Whitmore Way until her passing or voluntary relinquishment thereof. The second, a trust deed. Signed. Filed. With a clause I had never known existed. The property cannot be sold or altered without the express written consent of Eleanor Whitmore, spouse of Leonard Whitmore. I sat there, the paper like a stone, in my hands. They couldn't have sold it. Not legally. And they knew. Or they should have known. Which meant Greg and Melissa had either bypassed it. Or buried it. I called June the next morning. She didn't hesitate. "I'll meet you here after lunch. Bring everything." By mid-afternoon, we sat in a small conference room inside her old firm. Though technically retired, June still had access. And more importantly, she still had connections. She scanned every page, reading aloud with growing disbelief. "Eleanor, this is airtight. They had no right to move you out, no right to renovate, and absolutely no right to profit off that. House." She opened a property database on her laptop and began pulling records. One by one, she uncovered bank transfers, real estate documents, and something that made her hand freeze over the mousepad. "Do you know anything about this parcel on Halden Avenue?" "No," I replied. "Should I?" "It's a duplex, Leonard. Purchased through the trust in '97, rent-controlled, still under your name." I blinked. "I've never received anything from it." "Greg has," she said quietly. She turned the screen toward me. Monthly deposits into a private LLC account Greg had opened 2 years ago. Not linked to the family trust. Not linked. To me, each transaction was labeled maintenance reimbursement, but they added up to thousands. Tens of thousands. June printed everything. Then she pulled up another database, one linked to Melissa's staging company. Photos of furniture, tags, descriptions. One item caught my eye. My mother's cherrywood armoire. She said it was 2. "Old to move," I whispered. June clicked again. "A price tag, $4,500. "She's selling your inheritance," June said, voice tight with fury. "This isn't just oversight. This is theft. Systemic, coordinated theft." I didn't speak. I felt something rise inside me. Slow. Not hot like rage, but steady like rising water. Indignation. Not the loud kind. The kind that breaks dams. Back at Rosewood that night, I sat by the window with Leonard's papers spread across my lap. I traced his signature with my fingertip. His penmanship had never wavered. Bold, clear, certain. He had tried to protect me. He had planned for this, and I had trusted too easily, folded too quickly, but not anymore. I turned to my journal and began to write, not a daily note this time, but a plan, a quiet, meticulous, strategic reckoning. They think I am harmless because I am small, because I make tea slowly and my hands shake. But I built a life from nothing. I held a family together with thread and grace, and I will not be erased. The first thing I did was buy my own tea. That may not sound like much, but to me, it was everything. Chamomile with lavender, loose leaf, not bagged, the kind Leonard used to steep on cold evenings while reading the paper. The kind that smelled like home. I kept it tucked in my nightstand, behind my journal and Leonard's will, like a quiet promise to myself. The next thing I did was ask June, gently but firmly, to represent me as counsel of record. She didn't flinch. "It'll ruffle feathers," she said, sliding her glasses down her nose as she signed the form. "Good." We met the notary that Tuesday, a former colleague of June's named Ellis, who now worked out of a converted sunroom filled with plants and framed law certificates. He poured us warm cider and didn't blink when I laid the documents before him like cards at the end of a long game. We revoked Greg's power of attorney. We updated my trust management. We moved all accessible accounts into my sole name, And then, we refiled the deed. The home on Whitmore Way would return to my full legal control, not by violence, not by vengeance, by paper, by ink, by quiet, unshakable truth. June drove me back to Rosewood afterward, but I asked her to take a short detour. I wanted to stop by the house. "It'll sting," she warned. I nodded. "I need to feel it." Greg wasn't home. Neither was Melissa. The lockbox was still on. The porch. Likely for contractors or showings. And I knew the code. I walked through the front door with a strange stillness in my chest. Not fear, not nostalgia, just clarity. The hardwood floors had been sanded, but the faint scuff marks from Leonard's armchair remained, ghost-like near the fireplace. Melissa had removed the curtains. The whole place looked hollow, bigger maybe, but colder too. I walked through the kitchen, remodeled just enough to erase the past, but not enough to feel new. I opened the silverware drawer, and there, it was, the spoon. Tarnished slightly, but untouched. The one my mother gave me when I was newly married. She'd said, "When they take your voice, stir louder." I slipped it into my coat pocket, and then I found a notepad on the counter. I flipped to a clean sheet and wrote in slow, deliberate print, "The walls remember me, even if you don't." I left it there, not as a threat, as a record. That weekend, I called a realtor. A kind woman named Camilla, who spoke with warmth in her voice, and didn't ask why an 80-year-old woman wanted to list a duplex on Halden Avenue. I met her there in person, wore my lavender scarf, and held my cane with pride, not apology. The units were dated, but clean. The tenants smiled at me from their garden chairs as I passed. "This place has heart," Camilla said. "So did the man who bought it for me," I replied. I listed the property. Within 10 days, it sold for twice what Greg had estimated on his last spreadsheet. With that money, I opened an account in my name. Not shared, not managed. Mine. I donated part of it to the county's senior legal aid fund, quietly, anonymously, the C. Rest would come later. Back at Rosewood, I started painting again. At first, just watercolors of the garden outside my window. Then, bolder pieces, memory portraits, a teacup, a porch swing. A house before its walls were gutted. I took a piano class every Thursday, shared the bench with a retired dentist named Harold, who smelled of peppermint and turpentine. I wasn't very good, but I didn't care. My fingers moved again. My back straightened. My shoulders stopped folding in on themselves. Even my laughter started to return. Small at first, but growing, like vines finding the sun again. 1 week before the planned gut renovation of my old house, I made the final call. I sold it, not to another developer, not to someone who'd erase what it had meant. I sold it to a nonprofit that converted historic homes into transitional shelters for women over 60. Women like me, who had been cast aside or tricked or rendered invisible. The nonprofit's director, a woman named Evelyn with steel gray hair and a voice like stone wrapped in silk, walked through the house with tears in her eyes. She touched the walls gently, like they mattered. "They do," I said. "They remember." The sale closed in 3 days. The money transferred to a fund I set up in Leonard's name, the Whitmore Foundation for Dignified Aging, and I never told Greg. Not until I was ready. They came just after lunch on a Wednesday, storming through the front doors of Rosewood Pines like a hurricane in leather shoes and dry shampoo. Greg's face was blotched red, jaw clenched. Melissa trailed behind him in a crisp cream blouse, clutching her phone like it could save her from whatever was about to happen. I was already waiting in the sitting room, wearing my powder blue suit. The one Leonard liked best, the one he said made me look like I walked through time instead of aging with it. My pearls sat neatly at my throat, not for decoration, but for armor. Greg spotted me first. "You sold it?" He barked. Are you out of your mind? I didn't flinch. Hello, Gregory. You sold our house, Melissa cut in, voice high, hands fluttering. Without telling us, without even... It was never your house, I said quietly. Greg's mouth opened, but I raised my hand. You seem confused, I continued, so I had copies made. I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila folder, thick with paperwork, labeled tabs poking out like sharpened teeth. Greg stared. Here you'll find the trust documents Leonard signed, I said, setting the folder on the table between us. You'll see the clause giving me sole authority, the ones your lawyer apparently didn't read closely. Melissa paled. This section, I added, tapping a blue tab, details your unauthorized withdrawals. Greg, I have every transaction, including rent from the Halden duplex you never told me existed. He blinked, but said nothing. Melissa, this tab, I flipped to a green divider, documents the resale of my mother's heirlooms through your staging company. She opened her mouth, then closed it. For a moment, all I heard was the faint hum of the air conditioning and the quiet squeak of someone's walker wheels down the hallway. Then Greg tried again. Quieter this time. We were taking care of you. No, I said, my voice soft but firm. You were silencing me. You took everything that still tethered me to the world I helped build, and you tried to turn it into profit. His face twitched. You had my trust, I said, folding, my hands in my lap. And you sold it for countertops and a pool. Melissa let out a small sound, not quite a sob, not quite a protest. Just a sound that slipped out before she could catch it. Greg slumped into the armchair across from me, suddenly looking 10 years older. Why didn't you just talk to us? He murmured. I tilted my head. I did. For years. You just stopped, listening. He stared down at the floor like he was trying to find his reflection in it. I was grieving, I said quietly. Your father had just died. I let things slide. I let you take over. And you took everything. I stood slowly, the soft creak of my knees the only sound. I don't want vengeance, Greg, I said. I don't want to ruin you. I simply wanted my life back. He looked up, hollow. Melissa had turned toward the window, as if the landscaping outside could offer her answers. I raised a man, I said. But somewhere along the way, you stopped being one. I picked up my walking stick from where it rested by the chair. Neither of them moved. Don't worry, I'm not pressing charges, I added as I walked past. But the house is gone. The trust is closed. And my voice? You won't be silencing it again. I paused at the door. You didn't lose a house, I said, turning just enough to look Greg in the eye. You lost a mother. Then I walked out, not away from them, but toward myself, toward the life I still had, and the dignity they never saw coming. 2 years later, I live in a small white cottage with ivy on the windowsills and lavender by the steps. It sits just behind what used to be my house, the one they tried to erase. Now it's called Whitmore House, and the sign above the gate reads, "A place for women to begin again." Every Thursday at 3 p.m., we gather on the porch, the same one Leonard built with his hands. The wood has been sanded, repainted, and sealed, but it still remembers the scrape of his boots, the weight of my chair rocking back and forth. We call it Tea Circle. It's not formal. Some women bring cookies, others just bring silence and let it fill the space between sips. Most of them are like me, women who were slowly uninvited from their own lives. Some fled marriages. Some were pushed out by children, who stopped seeing them as anything but a line item. But here, we speak, we laugh, full and loud, we grieve, openly and without shame. Some of us write letters we'll never send. Others plant flowers in memory of what they lost. Me, I keep a journal. The cover is worn leather now, with the words, "My Second Life," etched on the front in gold leaf. I write in it every evening, just before dusk. On one such evening, the sky tinged, pink like an old bruise fading, I received a letter. Not typed, not forwarded, handwritten. I recognized the name immediately. Claire Whitmore, my eldest granddaughter. The one who used to braid my hair with wildflowers when she was small. The one who stopped visiting without ever really saying goodbye. The envelope was plain. No return address. But inside, her handwriting wobbled with honesty. "Grandma, I don't know if this will ever reach you. I don't know if I deserve for it to. But I want you to know I'm sorry. For not asking. For not wondering. For staying quiet when I knew something wasn't right. I miss you. I've missed you since the day you left. Would you let me come see you?" There was no manipulation in her words. Just the kind of truth that arrives late, but still matters. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in the back of my journal. Then I walked out to the porch. My old rocking chair was waiting. The one Melissa said was too worn to keep, now varnished and sturdy beneath me. Next to it, mounted on the post, was a bronze plaque. In memory of Leonard Whitmore. He believed in me. The wind carried the scent of mint and pine, and from inside, someone was playing piano. Slow, deliberate chords. I think it was Nora, one of our newer residents. Her hands trembled too, but she played like the keys forgave her. I looked out over the porch railing at the house, my house, now full of women beginning again. Its windows were warm with light. The porch lamp stayed on well past dark, not for safety, but as a sign that no one here was forgotten. Not anymore. And as the sun dipped behind the trees and the light softened around me, I closed my eyes and rocked gently forward. They tried to silence me. I whispered into the quiet. But I became the echo they'll never escape.